The blood trickled down Sophia Miller's chin as she stumbled through the darkness, her swollen eye barely able to make out the distant lights of Whisper Creek. Behind her, the echo of her husband's drunken rage faded with each painful step, replaced by the howling wind across the empty prairie. It was 1878, and in the vast Wyoming territory, a woman had few options when fleeing a monster who wore a wedding band. Sophia had endured 3 years of Vernon Miller's escalating cruelty. Tonight had been different. Tonight, she knew if she stayed, she wouldn't see the morning sun. She touched her bruised cheekbone gingerly, wincing as her fingers traced the split in her lip, the swelling beneath her eye. 22 years old, and already she felt like a ghost of the vibrant girl who had arrived out west with dreams of a new beginning. The rain began to fall as the town came into view, a sparse collection of buildings clinging to existence against the unforgiving landscape. Sophia's dress, once a cheerful blue cotton, was now torn and stained with blood. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed forward, one foot in front of the other, a bundle of her meager possessions clutched against her chest. The saloon was the only building still alight at this hour. Piano music drifted into the muddy street along with raucous laughter. Sophia hesitated at the edge of town. A respectable woman didn't enter such establishments. But tonight, respectability seemed a luxury she could no longer afford. She stumbled up the wooden steps, her hand trembling as she pushed open the batwing doors. The music faltered as heads turned toward her, conversations dying mid-sentence. In the corner, a card game paused, 5 men frozen with playing cards in hand. Behind the bar, a mustached man stopped polishing a glass. "Help," Sophia whispered, her voice cracking. "Please." Her legs gave way beneath her, and the world tilted. As darkness closed in, she was vaguely aware of strong arms catching her before she hit the floor. Quentin Hayes had seen his share of violence. 6 years as a ranch hand and trail rider had shown him the brutal side of the frontier. But the sight of the woman's face as she collapsed into his arms made his blood run cold. Purple bruises bloomed across her cheekbone, her lip was split and swollen, and dried blood caked her hairline where someone had struck her hard enough to break skin. "Get Doc Sullivan," he barked at no one in particular, lifting the woman as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, her body radiating heat through the damp fabric of her dress. "Is she dead?" asked Samuel Dyer, the saloon owner, peering over the bar with evident concern. "No, but she needs help." Quentin carried her to a back room where Samuel sometimes slept when too tired to return home. He laid her carefully on the narrow bed, acutely aware of the other men crowding the doorway. "Give her some space," Quentin growled, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. The onlookers retreated, muttering among themselves. Dr. Benjamin Sullivan arrived 10 minutes later, his gray hair disheveled from sleep, medical bag in hand. He shooed Quentin from the room while he examined the woman, leaving the cowboy to pace the length of the saloon, hat in hand, spurs jingling with each step. When the doctor emerged, his face was grim. "She'll live. Couple of cracked ribs, that eye's swollen shut, and she's got bruises everywhere." Someone worked her over proper. "Husband?" Quentin asked, though he already knew the answer. "She's wearing a wedding band," the doctor confirmed. "Sadly, I've seen this before. Some men think a marriage license is permission to treat a woman like property." "Who is she?" "Don't know." "Must be new to these parts. She's sleeping now gave her something for the pain." The doctor hesitated. "She can't stay here, Quentin. This is no place for a lady, even one in her condition." Quentin nodded. "Mrs. Holloway might take her in." "Good thinking." "The widow's got that spare room since her son left for California. I'll stop by in the morning to check on her." The doctor packed his bag. "Keep an eye on her till then, would you? She shouldn't be moved tonight." After the doctor left, Quentin pulled a chair beside the bed and settled in for the night. The woman's breathing was shallow but steady. Even with the bruises, he could see she was beautiful high cheekbones, a delicate nose, full lips. Her hair, the color of burnished copper, spilled across the pillow like liquid fire. Who would do this to her? Quentin had never raised a hand to a woman and couldn't comprehend the kind of man who would. His father had taught him better. "A man who hits a woman," Joshua Hayes had said, "is no man at all." Sometime before dawn, the woman stirred, her uninjured eye fluttering open. Fear flashed across her face when she saw him. "You're safe," Quentin said quickly, keeping his voice low and gentle. "You're in Whisper Creek." "I'm Quentin Hayes. You collapsed in the saloon last night." She tried to speak, winced at the pain from her split lip, then tried again. "Sophia," she whispered. "Sophia Miller." "Mrs. Miller," Quentin acknowledged. "The doctor's been. He says you'll be all right with rest." Her good eye filled with tears. "He'll find me." "Who?" "Vernon, my husband." Her fingers twisted the thin gold band on her left hand. "He always finds me." Quentin felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Did he do this to you?" A single tear tracked down her bruised cheek as she nodded. "He won't touch you again," Quentin promised, surprising himself with the fierceness in his voice. "Not while I'm around." For the first time, something like hope flickered in Sophia's eye. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Quentin considered this. At 31, he'd spent most of his adult life drifting from ranch to ranch, town to town. He had few attachments and fewer responsibilities. Yet something about this woman stirred a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. "Let's just say I don't much care for men who hit women," he finally answered. "Rest now. We'll figure things out in the morning." By noon the next day, Sophia was installed in Widow Holloway's spare room. The older woman had taken one look at Sophia's face and opened her home without hesitation. "Barbaric," she'd muttered, helping Sophia into a clean nightgown. "Absolutely barbaric." Quentin visited daily, bringing small gifts, wildflowers from the prairie, a ribbon for her hair, once even a book of poetry he'd traded for with a traveling peddler. He would sit with her while she recovered, telling stories of his adventures on cattle drives or his childhood in Missouri. "Why did you come west?" Sophia asked him one afternoon, 2 weeks after her arrival. The bruises on her face had faded to yellowish smudges, though the memories remained as fresh as ever. Quentin leaned back in his chair, considering. "Freedom, I suppose. After the war, everything back east felt confined. Out here, a man can breathe. And a woman," his eyes met hers. "Should be the same, I reckon, though I'm learning it often isn't." Sophia nodded, absently touching the fading bruise beneath her eye. "I came west as a bride. Vernon courted me in Pennsylvania. He was charming, told me about his ranch in Wyoming, painted such a picture of our life together." Her voice grew distant. It was all lies. There was no ranch, just a small plot of land with a cabin that leaked when it rained. And Vernon. "He changed the moment we were married." "How did you end up in Whisper Creek?" "Vernon took a job at the Silver Ridge mine. Said it was temporary, just until we had enough money to build a proper ranch." She gave a bitter laugh. "That was 3 years ago." Quentin's hand tightened on his hat brim. "And he's been hurting you all this time?" It started small. A slap when dinner wasn't to his liking. A shove when I spoke to another man, then it got worse. Sophia's voice trembled. "That night, he came home drunk, accused me of looking at one of the miners. He wouldn't stop. I thought he would kill me." "How did you get away?" He passed out. I grabbed what I could and ran. She looked up at him, her green eyes clear despite the fading bruises. "I can't go back, Quentin. I won't survive it." "You won't have to," he promised. "We'll figure something out." But they both knew Vernon Miller would come looking for his wife. In the eyes of the law, Sophia was his property. She had no money, no family nearby, nowhere to go. 3 weeks after Sophia's arrival, Vernon Miller rode into Whisper Creek. Quentin spotted him from the window of the general store, a stocky man with a thick beard and cold eyes, asking questions at the livery stable. Quentin slipped out the back and hurried to Widow Holloway's house. Sophia was hanging laundry in the garden when he arrived, her copper hair gleaming in the sunlight. For a moment, seeing her there alive, healing Quentin forgot the urgency of his mission. Then she turned and saw his face. He's here, she said, not a question. Quentin nodded. Asking around town, won't be long before someone points him this way. Sophia's hands trembled as she dropped the wet sheet back into the basket. What do I do? Pack your things. I'll meet you at the back door in 10 minutes. Where will we go? I know a place, Quentin said. Trust me. Sophia hesitated only a moment before nodding. I do. They rode out of town on Quentin's horse, Sophia seated behind him, arms wrapped around his waist. Her meager possessions were stuffed into saddlebags. Widow Holloway had given them supplies, food, a canteen, a blanket, and promised to delay Vernon if he came calling. They headed north, following game trails instead of the main road. Quentin knew these lands well from hunting expeditions. By nightfall, they reached a small cabin nestled in a grove of aspen trees. It belongs to a friend, Quentin explained as he helped Sophia dismount. Jeremiah only uses it during hunting season. We'll be safe here for a while. The cabin was simple but sturdy, one room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bed pushed against the far wall. Sophia stood awkwardly in the center of the room while Quentin lit the lantern. I'll sleep outside, he said, reading her discomfort. There's a lean-to for the horse. I'll be comfortable enough there. No, Sophia said quickly. I mean, please don't leave me alone. Her cheeks flushed. I'm not suggesting, I understand, Quentin said gently. I'll make a pallet by the fire. I'm a light sleeper. No one will get near without me knowing. They settled into a routine over the next few days. Quentin hunted and checked snares while Sophia kept the cabin. In the evenings, they talked by firelight, sharing stories of their lives before Wyoming. Quentin told her about growing up in Missouri, losing his mother to influenza when he was 12, learning to ride and rope from his father. He spoke of the war, not the fighting itself, but the loneliness of it, the way it had changed him. Sophia shared memories of her childhood in Pennsylvania, her dreams of becoming a schoolteacher before Vernon had swept her away with promises of adventure. She spoke of the daughter she'd lost in childbirth during her 2nd year of marriage, how Vernon had blamed her for the baby's death. I named her Elizabeth, Sophia said softly, staring into the flames. Vernon wouldn't even let me mark her grave properly, said it was bad luck to name a baby that never drew breath. Quentin's heart ached for her. I'm sorry, Sophia. She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Sometimes I think it was a blessing. What kind of life would she have had with him as a father? On the 5th night, a spring storm rolled in, bringing thunder that shook the cabin's walls. Sophia startled at each crash, moving closer to Quentin where they sat by the fire. I've always been afraid of storms, she admitted. Vernon used to lock me outside during thunderstorms when he was angry, said it would teach me respect. Quentin's jaw tightened. Your husband is a special kind of monster. Was, Sophia corrected. I'm never going back to him. No, Quentin agreed. You're not. When lightning struck nearby, illuminating the cabin in harsh white light, Sophia gasped and instinctively grabbed Quentin's hand. He squeezed her fingers gently, offering silent comfort. Tell me something good, she whispered as thunder rumbled overhead. Something to drown out the storm, Quentin thought for a moment. When I was a boy, my father took me camping in the Ozarks. We found a hidden valley with a waterfall so clear you could see trout swimming at the bottom of the pool. We stayed 3 days, just fishing and swimming. No one else for miles around. It sounds wonderful, Sophia murmured. It was. I've been looking for a place like that ever since, somewhere peaceful, somewhere to call home. Sophia's eyes met his, firelight dancing in their green depths. Have you found it? I'm beginning to think so, Quentin said softly. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibility. Then Sophia gently withdrew her hand. I should try to sleep, she said, rising from her chair. Good night, Quentin. Good night, Sophia. He watched her cross to the bed, noting how she moved with more confidence now, the shadows of fear receding day by day. Something was growing between them, something fragile and unexpected. But Sophia was still married, still healing from years of abuse. The last thing Quentin wanted was to rush her or make her feel trapped in another way. So he tamped down his feelings and stretched out on his pallet, listening to the storm and Sophia's soft breathing until sleep claimed him. The next morning dawned clear and fresh. Quentin rose early, leaving Sophia sleeping while he checked his snares. He returned with 2 rabbits to find her outside, gathering wildflowers that had bloomed after the rain. "For the table," she explained, holding up her colorful bouquet. Quentin smiled. "They're almost as pretty as you." Sophia blushed, the pink in her cheeks highlighting how much her face had healed. The bruises were nearly gone now, only the faintest yellow discoloration remaining beneath her eye. Her split lip had mended, and the light was returning to her eyes. They spent the day together, Sophia showing Quentin how to make rabbit stew with wild onions and herbs she'd found near the cabin. He taught her how to set snares and identify animal tracks. They laughed more easily with each other now, the wariness of the first days giving way to comfortable companionship. As the sun began to set, Quentin built a fire outside, and they sat side by side watching the flames dance against the darkening sky. "We should return to town soon," Quentin said reluctantly. "Check if Vernon's still around, make sure Widow Holloway is all right." Sophia nodded, her expression sobering. "What happens then, Quentin? I can't hide forever." "You could divorce him," Quentin suggested. "It's not easy, but it can be done, especially with evidence of cruelty." "And then what? Where would I go? What would I do?" The questions hung in the air between them. Quentin took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "You could stay in Whisper Creek, with me if you wanted." Sophia turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. "Quentin, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "And I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know you have options, you have a place." She was quiet for so long that Quentin began to regret his words. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." It wasn't an answer, but it was enough for now. They returned to Whisper Creek the next day, approaching cautiously from the north. Quentin left Sophia hidden in a stand of trees while he scouted the town. He returned an hour later with mixed news. "Vernon's gone," he reported. "Left town 3 days ago, according to Samuel, but he was asking questions about you and about me. Made quite a scene at the saloon when he learned you'd been there. He'll come back," Sophia said with certainty. "He won't let me go so easily. We'll be ready if he does." Quentin helped her mount his horse. "For now, Widow Holloway is expecting you. She was worried sick." Widow Holloway welcomed Sophia back with open arms and a hot meal. She had news of her own Vernon had indeed come calling, demanding to know where his wife was hiding. "I told him I hadn't seen hide nor hair of you," the widow recounted over supper. Then Sheriff Taylor arrived and reminded Mr. Miller that threatening a respected widow was frowned upon in these parts. "What did Vernon do?" Sophia asked, stormed off, saying he'd be back with papers proving his rights as your husband. The widow sniffed disapprovingly. "Man has all the charm of a rattlesnake." That night, after Widow Holloway had retired, Sophia and Quentin sat on the porch swing, speaking in low voices. "I've been thinking," Quentin said, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I've saved a fair bit of money over the years, enough to buy a small spread north of here. Good water, decent grazing land. Your own ranch," Sophia smiled. "That sounds wonderful." "Our own ranch," Quentin corrected gently. "If you wanted." Sophia's breath caught. "Quentin, are you asking? I'm asking if you might consider a future with me once you're free of Vernon." He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the fading light. "I know it's soon. I know you've been hurt. But I also know what I feel when I'm with you, and it's something I've never felt before." Tears shimmered in Sophia's eyes. "I feel it too." "But Vernon, we'll handle Vernon," Quentin promised. "Together." Sophia reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I've been thinking, too, about going to Cheyenne to speak with a lawyer. Wyoming territory has more progressive laws for women than most places. I might be able to get a divorce." "I'll take you," Quentin said immediately. "Whenever you're ready." She nodded, her expression resolute. Soon, but first, I need to face Vernon if he returns. I need to look him in the eye and tell him I'm not his property anymore. Quentin's admiration for her courage only deepened. You won't face him alone. 3 days later, Vernon Miller returned to Whisper Creek. This time, he brought company 2 rough-looking men Quentin recognized as miners from Silver Ridge. They rode straight to the sheriff's office, where Vernon presented papers declaring his legal right to retrieve his wife. Sheriff Taylor came to Widow Holloway's house himself to deliver the news. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller," the aging lawman said, removing his hat as he stood in the parlor. "The law's clear on this. A husband has rights to his wife's companionship, even if he beats her," Quentin demanded, standing protectively beside Sophia. The sheriff had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The law doesn't much concern itself with what happens between a man and his wife behind closed doors, not unless it ends in murder." "And if I refuse to go with him?" Sophia asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Then I'd be obliged to assist him in bringing you home," Sheriff Taylor admitted. "I don't like it any more than you do, Mrs. Miller, but I'm sworn to uphold the law." "Give us a day," Quentin requested. "Let her prepare herself." The sheriff hesitated, then nodded. "I'll tell Miller you'll meet him at my office tomorrow at noon, best I can do." After he left, Sophia sat very still, her hands folded in her lap. "I won't go back to him," she said finally. "I can't." "You won't have to," Quentin assured her. "We'll leave tonight, head for Cheyenne like we discussed." "And then what, live as fugitives?" Sophia shook her head. "No. There has to be another way." They spent the evening debating options, each seeming more desperate than the last. Run to California. Seek shelter with Quentin's family in Missouri. Appeal to the territorial governor. It was Widow Holloway who provided the solution, arriving at breakfast with a gleam in her eye. "I've had a thought," she announced, pouring coffee with a steady hand. "Vernon's claim is based on his marriage to Sophia, yes." "That's right," Quentin confirmed. "And what makes a marriage legal?" Sophia frowned. "A license, a ceremony, and witnesses," the widow added triumphantly. "Who witnessed your marriage to Vernon, my dear?" The minister in Laramie, a couple from Vernon's boarding house. Sophia's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "But they're not here." "There's no one in Whisper Creek who can testify that I'm actually Vernon's wife." "Precisely," Widow Holloway smiled. "Your word against his, and with those bruises still visible, I know who the townspeople will believe." The plan was simple. At noon, Sophia would meet Vernon at the sheriff's office. She would publicly deny being his wife, claiming he was a violent man who had abducted her from Pennsylvania and forced her to live as his wife without benefit of clergy. "It's not entirely a lie," Sophia reasoned. "Our marriage may have been legal in form, but it was built on Vernon's deceptions. The riskiest part would come if Vernon produced their marriage certificate." But as Widow Holloway pointed out, most men didn't carry such documents when traveling, especially not minors who lived in rough conditions. "It's worth trying," Quentin agreed, "but I'll have horses ready just in case we need to make a quick departure." At precisely noon, Sophia walked into the sheriff's office, head held high despite the fear churning in her stomach. Quentin followed a step behind, his hand never far from his revolver. Vernon Miller stood by the sheriff's desk, his 2 companions flanking him. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Sophia, then flicked to Quentin with naked hatred. "There's my wayward wife," Vernon growled. "Come to collect what's mine, Sheriff." "Mr. Miller claims you're his lawfully wedded wife, madam," Sheriff Taylor said formally. "Is that true?" Sophia straightened her spine, meeting Vernon's gaze directly. "I am not this man's wife," she stated clearly. "This man abducted me from my home in Pennsylvania 3 years ago. He has held me against my will, beaten me repeatedly, and forced me to live as his wife without any legal marriage." Vernon's face darkened with rage. "She's lying. We were married in Laramie, May of '75. "Do you have proof of this marriage?" the sheriff asked. "Of course Vernon patted his pockets, his expression shifting to confusion. The certificate's at our cabin, but everyone knows she's my wife." "Actually," Quentin interjected, "no one in Whisper Creek knew Mrs. Sophia until she arrived here a month ago, beaten and bloodied by your hand." Murmurs ran through the small crowd that had gathered outside the office, peering through windows and doors. Vernon's gaze darted around, sensing the shift in sympathies. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "She's wearing my ring." Sophia slipped the gold band from her finger and placed it on the sheriff's desk. "A shackle, not a ring, forced upon me like everything else." Vernon lunged forward suddenly, his face contorted with fury. "You ungrateful whore!" Quentin stepped between them, blocking Vernon's path to Sophia. "That's enough." "Get out of my way, cowboy," Vernon snarled. "This is between me and my wife." "The lady says she's not your wife," Quentin replied evenly. "And even if she was, no man has the right to treat a woman the way you've treated her." Vernon's hand moved to his belt, where a hunting knife hung in a leather sheath. "I said, get out of my way." What happened next unfolded in seconds. Vernon drew his knife. Quentin reached for his gun. One of Vernon's companions made a similar move. Sheriff Taylor shouted for everyone to stand down. Then a shot rang out not from Quentin's revolver, but from the small derringer Sophia had withdrawn from her pocket. Vernon stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "You shot me," he gasped, disbelief evident in his voice. "Be thankful I'm a poor shot," Sophia replied, her hands steady as she kept the small pistol trained on him. "I was aiming for your heart." Sheriff Taylor moved quickly, disarming both Vernon's companions before they could react. "Everyone calm down now," he ordered. "Miss Sophia, please put down the weapon." Sophia hesitated, then slowly placed the derringer on the desk. "She tried to kill me," Vernon howled, still clutching his bleeding shoulder. "After you drew a knife," the sheriff pointed out. "From where I stand, that looks like self-defense." He turned to Sophia. "Where did you get the gun?" "I gave it to her," Widow Holloway announced from the doorway, where she'd been watching the proceedings. "For protection. After seeing what that animal did to her face, it seemed prudent." The sheriff sighed heavily. "This is a fine mess, Mr. Miller. I'll have the doctor see to your shoulder. Then you and I need to have a serious conversation about your claims." He looked at Sophia. "Until I can verify whether or not a legal marriage exists, I can't force you to go with this man, but I'd advise you to stay in town where I can find you." "She'll be at my house," Widow Holloway declared, "under my protection." As they left the sheriff's office, Sophia's legs finally gave way. Quentin caught her before she fell, supporting her weight as they walked toward Widow Holloway's house. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," he murmured. "Where did you get the derringer?" "The widow gave it to me this morning," Sophia admitted. "Said a woman should always have a last resort." "Remind me never to cross Widow Holloway," Quentin said with a small smile. That night, Vernon Miller escaped custody. Sheriff Taylor arrived at dawn with the news, apologetic and concerned. "His friends broke him out overnight," the sheriff explained. "Overpowered my deputy and fled. They took horses from the livery." "Which way did they go?" Quentin demanded. "North, according to tracks. But Miller was raving before they left, swearing he'd make his wife pay, make you both pay." The sheriff looked grim. "I've sent word to the territorial marshals, but it could be days before they respond." "We need to leave," Quentin said to Sophia once the sheriff had gone. "It's not safe here anymore." "Where will we go?" Sophia asked, hurriedly packing her few belongings. "I told you about that land north of here. My savings are enough for a down payment. We can start fresh." He hesitated. "If that's what you want." Sophia looked up from her packing, her expression softening. "It's what I want, with you." They left Whisper Creek within the hour, traveling light and fast. Quentin had traded for a second horse, allowing them to cover more ground. They rode north but veered west after several miles, taking less traveled paths through the rolling hills. By nightfall, they reached a trading post where Quentin was known. The owner, a grizzled mountain man named Jacob, offered them shelter in a back room. "Heard about the trouble in Whisper Creek," Jacob said as he served them a simple meal of beans and corn bread. "Word travels fast out here." "Have you seen 3 men pass through?" Quentin asked. "One with a shoulder wound." Jacob shook his head. "No, but I'll keep an eye out." "You two planning to push on tomorrow?" "Yes," Quentin confirmed. "We're heading to Peterson's Creek. I'm buying the old Ferguson place." "Good land," Jacob nodded approvingly. "Needs work, but good land." That night, lying on a pallet in Jacob's storeroom, Sophia turned to face Quentin in the darkness. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. "Taking me with you, Vernon won't give up easily." Quentin reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "I've never been more sure of anything." "We'll face whatever comes together." "I'm afraid," Sophia admitted. "Not just of Vernon, of letting myself love again, of trusting." "I know," Quentin said softly, "and I'll wait as long as it takes for you to feel safe. There's no rush, Sophia." She was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward in the darkness until her lips found a gentle, questioning kiss that held both gratitude and promise. "I don't want to wait," she murmured against his mouth. "Life's too uncertain. I've learned that the hard way." Quentin's arms encircled her, drawing her against his chest. "Then we won't wait. As soon as we reach Peterson's Creek, we'll build our life together." They continued their journey at dawn, traveling through increasingly rugged country. Quentin pointed out landmarks as they rode a distinctive rock formation shaped like a sleeping bear, a stand of ancient cottonwoods, a creek that ran clear even in the height of summer. "There," he said late in the afternoon of their second day, pointing to a valley nestled between gentle hills. "That's Ferguson's place, or it will be ours, once we sign the papers." Sophia followed his gesture, taking in the modest cabin, the barn in need of repair, the creek winding through meadows of spring grass. It wasn't grand, nothing like the ranch Vernon had promised, but it was real, tangible. "It's perfect," she said, meaning it. They approached cautiously, Quentin's hand resting on his revolver. But the property was deserted, showing no signs of recent visitors. The cabin was dusty but sound, with a stone fireplace, 2 rooms, and windows that faced the sunrise. "We'll need supplies," Quentin said as they explored. "Furniture, tools, seed for planting, and livestock eventually." "We'll make it work," Sophia assured him, already envisioning curtains at the windows, a garden beside the house. They spent the night in the cabin, making a pallet before the fireplace from blankets they'd brought. Sophia fell asleep in Quentin's arms, feeling truly safe for the first time in years. The next morning, they rode to Peterson's Creek, a small settlement consisting of a general store, a blacksmith, a church, and a handful of houses. The town had no sheriff of its own, falling under the jurisdiction of the county seat 30 miles east. At the general store, Quentin met with Harold Ferguson, the former owner of the property. Papers were signed, money exchanged, and by noon the land was legally theirs. They purchased essential supplies: flour, coffee, salt, nails, tools promising to return for more once they were settled. "You folks newlyweds?" asked Mrs. Peterson, the storekeeper's wife, as she wrapped their purchases in brown paper. Sophia and Quentin exchanged glances. "Not yet," Quentin answered, "but soon." "Well, you're welcome here," Mrs. Peterson said warmly. "We're a small community, but friendly. Church social every 3rd Sunday if you're of a mind to join." They were loading their supplies when a rider approached from the east, dust billowing behind his horse. Quentin tensed, moving closer to Sophia, but it was only a mail carrier making his monthly route. "Message for Peterson's Creek," the rider announced, handing a telegram to Mr. Peterson. "From the marshal's office in Cheyenne." Mr. Peterson read the telegram, his bushy eyebrows rising. He looked up, scanning the small crowd that had gathered, then approached Quentin and Sophia. "You folks wouldn't happen to be Quentin Hayes and Sophia Miller, would you?" Sophia's heart sank. "Yes," she admitted. "We are." Mr. Peterson handed them the telegram. "Seems the law's looking for you, but not how you might think." Quentin unfolded the paper and read aloud. Seeking Quentin Hayes and Sophia Miller, stop Vernon Miller, apprehended Cheyenne stop, wanted previous charges Colorado territory stop wife in Denver, confirms bigamy stop contact Marshall Wilson Cheyenne for details, stop Sophia's legs wobbled. Bigamy. Vernon has another wife. In Denver, apparently, Quentin said, rereading the telegram. Which means my marriage was never legal, Sophia finished, a wave of relief washing over her. I'm not his wife, I never was. The news spread quickly through the small community. By evening, when Sophia and Quentin returned to their cabin, 3 neighboring families had already stopped by with welcoming gifts: a quilt, a sack of seed potatoes, a young apple tree for planting. Folks around here don't hold with men who mistreat women, explained Elmer Cranston, a cattle rancher from the next property over. You're among friends now. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and pink, Sophia finally allowed herself to believe in the possibility of happiness. What happens now? She asked, leaning against Quentin's shoulder. Well, he said thoughtfully, I reckon we build this place up. Get some cattle come fall. Plant that apple tree. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. And I'd like to marry you, Sophia, properly in the church in town with witnesses and everything legal and binding. Sophia's throat tightened with emotion, even with all my scars. The visible ones and the ones you can't see. Quentin's hand came up to gently trace the fading bruise beneath her eye, his touch feather light. Especially with your scars. They're proof of your strength, Sophia, your courage. He leaned forward, pressing his lips to the mark on her cheekbone. I love every part of you, and I promise I'll stay by your side, forever. Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as she turned into his embrace. Yes, she whispered against his chest. Yes, I'll marry you. They were wed in Peterson's Creek on a Sunday in June, 6 weeks after arriving in the valley. Sophia wore a new dress of pale blue with wildflowers in her copper hair. Quentin stood tall in a clean black coat, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. The small church was filled with their new neighbors, people who had welcomed them without reservation, who had helped them repair the barn and plant crops, who had shared meals and stories and friendship. I now pronounce you husband and wife, announced Reverend Collins, beaming at the couple. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Hayes. As Quentin's lips met hers, Sophia felt the last shadows of her past receding. This was what a marriage should be built on: respect, kindness, and love freely given. The celebration continued at their cabin, neighbors bringing food and music and laughter. As the sun began to set, Quentin found Sophia sitting alone on their porch, watching the festivities in the yard. Happy, Mrs. Hayes? He asked, settling beside her. More than I ever thought possible, she replied, leaning into his embrace. I keep thinking I'll wake up and find this was all a dream. Not a dream, Quentin assured her, his arms tightening around her. Just the beginning. Over the following months, they transformed the rundown property into a home. Quentin repaired the barn and built furniture for the cabinet table where they shared meals, a rocking chair for the porch, a proper bed frame to replace their pallet on the floor. Sophia planted a garden that yielded vegetables for canning, started a flock of chickens, and hung curtains she'd sewn from fabric purchased in town. In September, they bought their first cattle, 10 heifers and a bull, the foundation of what would become the Double H Ranch. Quentin worked from dawn till dusk, building fences, digging a well closer to the house, preparing for the winter ahead. News came from Cheyenne that Vernon Miller had been sentenced to 5 years in territorial prison for bigamy, fraud, and escaping custody. His Denver wife had filed for divorce, a process made easier by his conviction. Are you all right? Quentin asked when Sophia shared the news. She considered the question carefully. Yes, she said finally. I feel free, like the last chain has been broken. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Sophia traced the lines of Quentin's face in the moonlight that spilled through the window. I want you to know, she said softly, that even with everything that happened, I wouldn't change it, because it led me to you, to this place, to this life. Quentin captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I used to think I was meant to wander, that I'd never find a place that felt like home. His eyes, dark and earnest in the dim light, held hers. But home isn't a place, Sophia. It's you. Winter came to the valley, bringing snow that blanketed the hills and froze the creek into glittering ice. The days grew shorter, the nights longer, but inside the cabin, warmth prevailed. They spent evenings by the fire, Quentin whittling or mending tack, Sophia sewing or reading from one of the books they'd ordered from Cheyenne. In February, during a rare break in the winter storms, Dr. Ellsworth from Peterson's Creek confirmed what Sophia had begun to suspect. She was with child, due in late summer. The news filled Quentin with equal parts joy and terror. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked repeatedly in the days that followed. "Do you need to rest more, eat more? Should I build a cradle now or wait?" Sophia laughed at his concern, even as she treasured it. "The baby and I are fine, Quentin. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." But she understood his worry. They both remembered the daughter she had lost during her time with Vernon, the tiny grave unmarked on a hillside near Silver Ridge. "This time will be different," Sophia assured him one night, guiding his hand to rest on her still flat stomach. "This child will be born from love, not fear. This child will thrive." Spring brought renewal to the land, fresh grass for the cattle, blossoms on the apple tree, wild iris blooming along the creek banks. As Sophia's body changed with her advancing pregnancy, so too did the ranch grow and prosper. They added to their herd, built a chicken coop, and planted more crops. Neighbors continued to be a blessing, particularly the women who shared their knowledge of childbirth and infant care. Mrs. Cranston gifted them a cradle that had rocked 5 of her own children. Mrs. Peterson organized a quilting bee that produced a beautiful blanket for the baby. Widow Holloway, who had relocated to Peterson's Creek to be near them, arrived with a trunk full of baby clothes she'd saved from her own children. "It takes a community to raise a child," the widow told Sophia as they sorted tiny gowns and caps. "And you found a good one here." July brought scorching heat that left Sophia wilting, her body ungainly with the weight of the child she carried. Quentin fussed over her endlessly, bringing cool water from the well, fashioning a fan from a piece of cardboard, insisting she rest during the hottest part of the day. "You're going to wear yourself out before the baby even arrives," Sophia teased him one evening as he massaged her swollen feet. "I just want everything to be perfect for you both," Quentin replied, his expression so earnest it made her heart ache with love. "It already is," she assured him, "more perfect than I ever dreamed possible." Their daughter arrived on a star-filled night in August, ushered into the world by Mrs. Cranston's experienced hands while Quentin paced the porch, alternately praying and cursing as Sophia's labor progressed. When at last the infant's cry pierced the night, Quentin froze mid-step. The door opened, and Mrs. Cranston beckoned him inside, her face wreathed in smiles. "Come meet your daughter, Mr. Hayes," she said. "She's a beauty, just like her mama." Sophia lay propped against pillows, her face flushed and damp with perspiration but radiant with joy. In her arms, wrapped in the quilt the women had made, was a tiny bundle with a shock of dark hair. "Look what we made," Sophia whispered as Quentin knelt beside the bed, his eyes wide with wonder. He reached out a trembling finger to touch the baby's velvet cheek. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Just perfect." "I thought we might call her Elizabeth," Sophia said softly. "To honor the daughter I lost, if that's all right with you." Quentin's eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "Elizabeth Hayes," he said, testing the name. "It's beautiful, she's beautiful." In the days that followed, Quentin found himself falling in love all over again with his daughter, so tiny and perfect, and with Sophia, whose strength and resilience continued to amaze him. He watched her nursing Elizabeth, singing softly as she rocked the cradle, and marveled at how far they had come from that night in Whisper Creek when she had collapsed, bruised and broken, in his arms. The scars on Sophia's face had faded to nearly invisible lines, detectable only if you knew where to look. The deeper scars, the ones left by years of abuse and fear, were healing too, replaced by confidence and joy. One evening, as the autumn equinox approached, Quentin found Sophia on the porch, Elizabeth sleeping against her shoulder. The setting sun painted the valley gold, casting long shadows across the land they now called home. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her on the bench he'd built that summer. "About how life changes," Sophia replied, her free hand finding his. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I was trapped, hopeless, certain I would die by Vernon's hand." She looked down at their sleeping daughter, then up at Quentin with eyes full of love. "Now look at us. A home, a family, a future." Quentin brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I used to think loving someone would be a weakness, something that would tie me down, keep me from being free." He smiled, shaking his head at his former self. "I was wrong. Loving you, loving Elizabeth, it's made me stronger, more whole." "We saved each other," Sophia said simply. As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, they sat together in the quiet of the evening, 3 hearts beating as one. The past, with all its pain and sorrow, had led them here to this moment, this family, this love that would sustain them through all the years to come. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, the sound echoing across the valley. Elizabeth stirred against Sophia's shoulder, then settled back into sleep, secure in her mother's arms. Quentin's arm encircled them both, holding his world close. "Forever," he whispered, a promise renewed. "I'm staying forever." And as night fell across the land they had claimed as their own, Sophia leaned into his embrace, finally, completely home.